I've never seen any. Like I said, it's very rare to see high priests. They got one down in Atlanta. It was one of the first ones I've heard of. They have the INCARNATION, which is the one that Crawley went in and invoked the Book of Law from. They got his stela, they got his even sarcophagus. This particular priest, but they don't have the body. They don't have the body, and I'm quite sure they have some priests. They have one that's been on display down in Atlanta from, I think, January up until August. Up until this month, next month. On loan from Germany or somewhere like that. No, I would not think so. I mean, I wouldn't think so. It was usually preserved for most of the pharaonic aspect and all. You know, the pharaoh is not necessarily the priest; it's honorary. You know what I'm saying? And that was done for a certain purpose. And basically, the whole embalming thing is also to break incarnation, which is a very interesting thing you said. Let's say if you didn't want to get down here, and this is a known fact, even in India. Let's say if you didn't want to come back, then basically what happens is with your soul, when you die, your soul is still in your body. Your spirit leaves. There's a difference between a spirit and a soul. A soul is a whole other dimension that can just basically rest for eons, encased in shit, out there in the bushes or anything like that, until it's trapped in the physical body. It's a whole nother world. It's a whole nother realm. So what happens is when you die, your spirit leaves. Everything down here has a spirit. Not everything has a soul. A soul is a son. That's the difference between white people and us and animals and everything. Everything down here has a spirit. White people are spiritual because they have a spirit, but they don't have a soul. That's the difference. We just automatically think that a spirit and a soul is one and the same, or it all comes together. A soul is a son, a primordial son that existed long before the creation of this particular universe. There was prior worlds, and in order for you to have a soul, you have to exist beyond creation or part of the original star matter or whatever, that particular terrain. Now, the mummification was, it goes like this. If your body dies, your spirit leaves and all of that, and maybe your consciousness of the previous life, but your soul remains in the body until the body is totally decayed. Then it leaves. So the Hindus understood that, and which is also Typhonian Egyptians. So the Typhonian Egyptians, after which is your pre-dynastic Hemmitt, traveled up into Mesopotamia, so-called Babylon, these are new names and stuff, but basically Northeast Africa on into Indus, Kush, the Indus Valley into India. They would take they understood to release the soul. They would cremate the body immediately. You see, then the soul is released. Because they were dealing with trying to get a soul back down here for an incarnation, the way they would do it. The Egyptians, the Hemmites did another thing. If you were worthy enough and you didn't want to come back or whatever, they would mummify the body. And when they mummified the body, because the body didn't rot, the soul would not have to leave, and the soul would stay suspended in its own other dimension. And so that was a way of fooling, so you don't come back in the incarnation and come back down here walking around here with a bull can in your hand somewhere on some corner, and used to be some pharaoh somewhere, and now you walk out there some miniskirt on and stuff. You see what I'm saying? Just ignorant. So they understood that particular part as a form. Incarnation can also be a prison system, where it can take you thousands of years just to get back to incarnate where you got some sense. And in so many words, that's what's happened to our particular conscious people. So to answer your question, it would be highly unlikely. Now, the reason why I say this about the priests, on the other hand, they didn't need the mummification. They knew how to get to the other realms based on their whole spiritual apparatus, their whole spiritual training. You see what I'm saying? Plus also this, some of the higher beings knew, and this is the key, this is why you're here today, the higher beings knew that it was inevitable, that it was going to need to be back on the planet at a certain time. So it was like a time release type of spirit, whereas they would go back into incarnation and they would bounce around for eons, always popping up as famous people or spiritual people throughout history, but nevertheless waiting for this particular day that we're in right now. So that particular ones would return. So in actuality, the most higher beings went through the whole process of incarnation because they understood there was a destiny. You see what I'm saying? They understood it was a destiny. So more than likely, one of the priests back then that understood that they would need to be around at this particular time would more than likely travel the road of incarnation and just keep bouncing around in this hell. And the reason why I can say that because I just look at my past life. I was a priest one time, twice in Hemmitt. Twice in Hemmitt, was one in Yemen. And I have several incarnations, past life regression. But we understood that you would have to come back down at this particular time, with this particular realm. So more than likely, the Imhotep is probably, that particular soul is probably back on the planet right now doing something. And also it's a type of spirit that is prominent and known. It's not like a person that's just walking around like an everyday person. It would literally be somebody, and it doesn't necessarily mean that he's into this type of consciousness, but he's into some type of thing, whereas he's known by several people based on either some political thing or whatever type. Yeah. Take case in point, Michael Jackson is a big spirit. There's no doubt about it. It's just that he just got caught up in some bull. And psychologically, it's all damaged. But spiritually, it's no doubt about it that you're talking about an advanced being. Or what was Michael Jackson? We have to ask that question. But my point is, clearly when you see the actual boy, to even when we talk about Thriller, when we talk about the largest album in world history, clearly you're talking about a person that is an advanced spirit. Although his spirit gives the energy to make him great, his mind is messed up that keeps him dead or keeps him on that particular level. So clearly you can see that these particular spirits and all, throughout life and all, we see them all the time. It doesn't necessarily have to be consciousness. But on the other hand, I highly would think that Imhotep would be back at this particular time to share in this process, more than likely. Just about what I know about just about everybody that's returning have already been in place. Either shared in the process of the previous couple of generations, because that whole wave of the 60s was a whole group of beings that came down for that. You see what I'm saying? You had a wave in the 30s. You see what I'm saying? It always comes up every 30 years or every 20-something years, you know, a cycle. So you have a few now, and unfortunately, the government has gotten much more advanced about it. But clearly, just for the mere fact that I'm standing before you talking, you know what I'm saying, this type of information, let you know that in actuality they saved some of the people that's supposed to be here at this particular time, they saved them for last. You know, so more than likely Imhotep is back here doing something. Give you an example, and I got it from 2 or 3 psychics. I was asking, I said, well, what about Akhenaten? And I got 2 or 3 psychics say, well, he's in Philadelphia somewhere. And I said, well, you know. But then again, that might sound crazy, but then again, if you understand incarnation, well, hell, if they are black people, then why wouldn't you be in Philly? Just like that thing said, when we're talking about we are the same beings. You understand what I'm saying? So if you understand the incarnation, then what is it? It's just incarnating into the physical body. So he could very well be in Philly. You know what I'm saying? In Philly, and the Hindus understood that. There's a story about this guy said, I'm going to die soon. And it's also in the movie Little Buddha. He said, I'm going to die soon. And it said, so to keep out from them, they would take their hands, and they would always, the other priests would feel in the air in some type of way they did, and they knew he was going to incarnate. And when he reincarnated back into this baby, they came and knocked on the door, told the family this was a spiritual, one of my masters that passed a couple months ago, and he's back now. Because that's also a talent where you can come back as fast as you can. Because sometimes you bounce around for 50 years before you come back, 100, or 1,000 for some people. But he said, you know, he died a couple months ago. He's back now. I guess 9 months before. And so they took the baby and took the baby to the Himalayas and took him to a certain spiritual retreat to raise him a certain way. You get that in the same movie Little Buddha. He just ended up being a little white boy and all. The movie Little Buddha with Keanu Reeves came out in 1994.
Also in Kundan, right?
Yeah, you have some of that also too. Although I do believe that the Dalai Lama they have now is nothing but some type of government agent or some type of clone and all, you know. Anybody in their right mind would not say that you're spiritual and side with the most diabolical powers that be. It just don't happen. And also too, remember this, no one is spiritual, no one that's really got something going on, they will ever show you on TV. You see what I'm saying? So anybody you ever see on the tube is either working for the government inadvertently and don't know it, or they are working for them as an agent and do know it. That's just the fact of the matter. They just don't put people. So any prominent figures you see, you saw that brother's own, that brother's own, that brother's a sellout. Because they don't put, they got white people right now, they don't even put on the TV, period. They don't even let you know their name. So how the hell they gonna give you some black leader on TV? No, so you're getting off the subject, but yeah, that would have something to do with it. Give me some more questions. What's that?
Yeah, what's the deal with the whales and the dolphins? How they have like a lot more melanin than other animals?
Well, you know, the whales and the dolphins are not, they're mammals. And in so many words, I said, at least the whales and the dolphins have incarnated souls. Because, you know, because we talk about some very advanced type, you know, communication and all that type of thing. But it's a huge mammal and all. So we do know that particular part. We do know that part when they beach themselves and all. It's not necessarily based on nature. They got sick. They beached themselves because it was time to beach themselves. You see what I'm saying? Beach themselves also too. So we know about that. What's that?
I read a book where they suggested that whales and dolphins were more advanced than we were, or humans were.
Well, in so many words, it's not a matter of, it's some of the, we share the same souls incarnated either in some of those advanced mammals. So advanced would not necessarily be based on whether they're higher than we are. It just, advanced would be that their faculties in what the body that their intelligence based on the body that they incarnate in gives them a greater opportunity to be much more spiritual or psychic or whatever, because, you know what I'm saying, because it's rooted in a certain terrain that allows that. But it's basically the same souls.
Okay.
You see, it's basically the same souls as ours. You know, as ours. What's that, brother?
Okay. I got a question. Considering that the Europeans are making movies such as The Matrix that are based on melanin, do you think they've learned how to harness that the real power of melanite yet?
No.
And if no, and then also, what information can you give us on how we can go about trying to learn how to harness that power? Okay,
it's a good question. That's a lot of stuff we're going to deal with today in this particular lecture, is dealing with that to pinpoint that actual discipline also too. Number one, to answer that based on the matrix, you got to realize these people have got 150 years in the occult sciences. That's just on the revival of it. We're talking about over 700 years of what the Moors left them, which we're going to also get into. This ties right in. The Moors left them. These people are not for a lack of knowledge. These people they busted the government, so-called. They always give up some stuff. You know, we can't do nothing about it, just to make us happy, like we in order. Back in '96, they came in and they said the government had spent almost $10 million in revising history. They said, how can you revise history? It's going to take $10 million. And in so many words, what it was is that's the department that it was under. In actuality, what they did was the government, they got people in the room, by probably many people in this room, and what they do is they sit around a table and they read every single book that comes out. Let's say, breaking down novels, because the other stuff is kind of explanatory. You know, you get into it, you can literally see what this person is coming from, what he has science. But let's say the novels, because a lot of novels are coming based on people get channels, and they're inspired to do those things. So they have to have these people up in there that sit around and read damn near every sci-fi novel, every horror novel that come out, mainly sci-fi and horror, so that they can understand the concepts of where these people is also coming from. So in actuality, they spend billions of dollars in just research alone on this particular science. The whole matrix thing is no big deal. That's basic metaphysics 101. It's just, it was great to us. They put the karate stuff up in there. But basically any Hindu text, Mahabharata, Upanishads, Rig Veda, all that goes into the whole thing. And this is an illusion in Maya. You see what I'm saying and all. There's a whole book on that whole thing. Coming from the Hindu text out of University of Chicago. Dreams, Illusions, and Other Realities by O'Flaherty book. As well as her book, the Rig Veda, Hindu myths. So there's tons of stuff based on this being an illusion. You got Michael Talbot's book, Holographic Universe. You got Seeing Through the Visible World by Gene Singer. There's just tons of books out here, and that's basic metaphysics 101. So when they put that out to the general audience now, but they did an excellent job. But basically, most of your Hindu texts, deal with that whole thing. But this is only an illusion and this whole thing here. We dealt with some of that. We'll go through some of that also too. So that's what they did on that particular part. Now, based on that particular energy, when we go into the particular science today and all, you're going to find out just about everything that the Bible tells you not to do. That's what you need to be doing. And as well as, you must fight against being righteous. Because righteous just means obedient prisoner. You see what I'm saying? So just about everything it tells you not to do, and let me give you an example. One we'll deal with today is lust, sexual eroticism, and sexual pleasure. It's supposed to be explored to the highest level. That's why the hell you think the government, he didn't stop no Bibles, he didn't stop no Christianity, he got a church on every corner, but he stopped the sexual revolution of the 70s with the AIDS scare. Why did he do that? Why did the government do that? Because they understand that it is the power of this particular realm of the power we're talking about is sexual energy. And this is hitting real spiritual, because that's what we're going to go into today. And that's the stuff we need to be dealing with. But I'm not just talking about on some beautiful romantic level. We're talking about freaky stuff that you got in your mind, other than the gender crossing you call homosexuality or whatever type thing. We're talking about the most erotic things that you have. Everybody has these things, but you are trained in this society not to deal with those things. You see what I'm saying? Especially the women, who is the greater vessel to deal with this type of stuff and all. We'll get into that particular part also too. But you're trained that if you give away to your passions and your passions and your erotic desires, that you're a freak. This is a patriarchal society, and it's done to shut down a certain feminine energy. Also, we're talking about sexual tantra, raising certain spiritual energies to a certain level. And this is the way of action, and this is actually the power. This is the actual power. What is the Kundalini energy? The real power is nothing but the Kundalini energy. That's what the real power is. The flip side of the Kundalini energy is the black dot. You saw the black dot, which is you see the staff of Tahuti. Then you have the two serpents, which represents the Kundalini serpentine fire. But you have the black dot is the end piece. Well, the real power is nothing but the force that goes to that particular black dot. And then through the black dot, it synthesizes into this particular magnificent force. The key here is, what is Kundalini energy? It's sexual energy. It's sexual energy. You just feel it going down most of the time, but it's the same energy. That's all it is. You see what I'm saying? So the whole concept of someone telling you, so that's that whole thing of 2,000 years ago. Well, tell them about Jesus, but they can't become Jesus. So therefore, you tell them about some man out here, which is yourself, but you don't give them the art to tap into it to find out that they are the actual people that the whole book is talking about. And there was never no person running around no 2,000 years ago. You see what I'm saying? There was no Christ. It's false. It's the biggest hoax in world history. You see what I'm saying? That's why it's on every corner. Even the Yeshua ben Pandera, when we tell you we're going to trace a historical person back. That historical person could have been a very political person, but as far as what the Christ does and details, it couldn't have been. It's impossible. And I've said this before, because the Christ itself is preserved for the end time. That's why the Hebrews, the Egyptians, the Greeks, half of the Romans, and everybody in the ancient world other than the doggone Roman government that started the whole papacy, put this bullshit out. It's impossible. You see what I'm saying? So even if you see, the whole concept is back in 91, at Pasco's Hotel down in Atlanta, somebody asked Dr. Ben about Jesus. He said, Jesus? I don't know about who is who? Say Jesus. He said, I don't know about no Jesus. he said, no, we understand he was a black man. It was like, he was like, no, I don't know about no Jesus. And Dr. Ben, he taking this person a roundabout way and all to let him think. And so one guy feeling sorry said, listen, we understand about Yeshua ben Pandera. Jeremiah talks about it in Gnostic and historical Christianity. Historical Christianity in the Jeremiah lectures, as well as Natural Genesis Volume 2, talks about also the historical Jesus, mystical Christ. But he said, this is the person when they trace something back to a person that was executed by the Roman government, a political figure or a revolutionary figure. This is the person that they trace back. They say it can line up with a certain story. But the other one is mythology. Turning the water into wine, walking on the water, Lazarus, which is Osiris, all that shit is mythology. And mythology and stuff. As a matter of fact, this is so interesting because what we're going to get into also today is, do you know, this is interesting, that when you trace the original Christ back, there's several Christ figures, but when you trace all of them back outside of Jesus, all of them are identified also with being aspects of the devil. Even harvest, they said, this mug here is Satan. You see what I'm saying? You got Sheba, Satan. You see, all of them, so obviously we're talking about somebody taking the polarities of the yin and the yang out, the light and the dark, the destruction and the flow of time, flow of energy to create, the flow of energy to destroy, which is both dual natures of Christ. And trying to put it to this particular figure that they created a couple of years ago. So, going back to this particular power we're going to deal with is based on sexual energy. That is the way of action. I mean, we get all of the other energy, and you can get the visions and all this type of stuff here. But we're talking about here a power that is based on sexual energy. We're going to get into that also too today. Give me some more questions. Any more questions? I know. Yeah, what's that?
The Atlanta child murders.
Yeah.
I was told today by my neighbor that it's still going on. The Ku Klux Klan are still abducting young men.
Probably so. As you know, it's interesting. Now I'm down there in a lecture back in 96. Yeah, 96. Sister stepped up to me in the lecture. She said, you know, one of my children was murdered. I said, oh man. I said, you the first person. I've been here about 15 years. I never have it. You're the first person I know that I actually met that was the mother of one of the children. She said they came and got her and took her to the place where her daughter was, and the daughter was still living. She was telling me this in the lecture. And she said the daughter looked like she was about 80. Although she was, I don't know, 8. She looked like she was about 80. The experiments that they was doing on her. In so many words, they couldn't say anything. They couldn't say anything or else they would die. They said, we kill everybody in your family, kill your mama's grandmama's mama. Ain't much to scare no black people up. But basically the experiments they were doing on the daughter was actually like 80, 85. And she was only 8. But the woman was telling me this like literally in the lecture. You know, in the lecture on this happening. So yes, it's experiments, but see, this is the key now. Anytime you do some stuff, that's an orientation. Whenever you saw that happen, that sets up a catalyst, or it sets up something for the rest of what they're going to be doing. I'm saying, so they actually showed you the actual pictures. So excuse me, Africans in early Europe. So at that particular time, we know that the Celtics, and all of that type of stuff is nothing but us. You see, so